What's up, everybody? It's Bear with BearIndependent.com. Back to basics. Let's talk about Commo. But first, briefly, answers from Bear. Bear, is it a requirement for you to have a luscious and beautiful beard in order to be a member of Bear Camp? Pretty much yes. Unless you're a lady or a child, in which case you do get a pass. But if you're a dude with testosterone and dangly bits, then yeah, that's pretty much how we roll. Second, Bear, why do you always shoot these things over here with your freaking trees down and your outhouse in the background? Because this is the view from my porch, y'all. Okay? It's the view from my porch. And right here, yes, that's right, delicious cow candy, beef bacon. It's what's for breakfast. Indeed. So, moving right along. Commo. By the way, we've covered all of this already in the Prepper Classroom, which is a free series of videos here on YouTube. You can go to our Prepper Classroom playlist here on YouTube and go to the Commo video, which let your fingers do the walking on that one. So, but Commo, first thing we need to start with is the caveat that I am in no way the Commo guy. I can press the button on the side of the radio, talk to other people. I understand a little bit about amplitude and propagation and bandwidth and yada, 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 transmit, receive. The first thing, now we have that out of the way. The first thing you got to understand is that you need to have a Commo plan. And so we're going to start with primary, alternate, contingency, emergency, PACE. Primary, alternate, contingency, emergency. Right now, during rule of law, our primary way of communicating is our cell phone, our iPhone, our Android, our Huawei, or whatever, right? That's how we communicate. Texts, emails, phone calls. There are people that still actually call each other on the phone, believe it or not. This has mostly been relegated to the doing of business and or mothers. You know, hey, you got to talk to your mom. It's the holiday season coming up. Which, honestly, hey, it's the holiday season coming up. Maybe you should call your mom. I don't know. That's up to you. That's between you and mom. You guys figure that out. Yes, she's going to overcook the turkey. And yes, you're probably going to get more socks for Christmas. But that's okay. You love her anyway. And socks are valuable because you can put them in your bug out bag when you're bugging out during the end of the world. So that when your feet get wet, they don't freeze and fall off. But I'm digressing, as I am wont to do. Now, so primary is your cell phone. That's how we're going to communicate. Well, what happens when the grid goes down, Bear, and there ain't no cell phone towers? That's why we have an alternate, Jethro. Simmer down. By the way, bacon is a 3-flip method when you do it on a griddle like this. And if you are going to do it in the oven, 425 for about 20 minutes. Pull the sheet pan out, rotate 180 degrees halfway through. For beef bacon, I'm talking about. Not swan belly, that filthy abomination. No, I'm talking about cow candy right here. Brisket that has been cured and smoked and turned into bacon. Ah! Yes, that's correct. So your alternate means, what would an alternate means of communication be? Baofeng? Probably. For most preparedness-minded individuals, probably a Baofeng. Whether it's a dual band, a tri-band, or whatever. If you're going to get a tri-band, make sure you get the right antennas to go with it, because most of those Nagoya antennas are dual band antennas, not tri-band antennas, which means that you have to, depending on which band you're broadcasting on, have to take one antenna off and add another antenna to it. Bear, what about those survival antennas with the little throwy thing that you throw it up in the tree and it hangs up? Yeah, those are cool. I like those. I use those. I have several of those in several of my kits. They work rather well. They greatly increase your ability to receive. But transmission, while it definitely has something to do with the quality of antenna you're using, it also has a lot to do with not only your terrain, but your the wattage of your radio as well. And there's things you can do to maximize the effective range of a radio. This is not that video. So your alternate is probably a handheld bow fang. Make sure that you have the appropriate antenna on it. I would recommend upgrading the antenna that comes with it because they're decent for simplex radio to radio over short distances. They're not great for intermediate or long range communications. What is long range? Well, that depends on where you are and what you're trying to do. But suffice it to say, a handheld is not going to get you any great distance. It may get you to a repeater, and if you know what you're doing with said repeater, that can get you out to the greater world at large. Homemade gummy bears. But it's not really, a handheld's not really going to do much more than that. And see, when you cook the bacon, you put the paper towels in between the bacon so that it absorbs all the greasiness, so that even though we are turning our arteries into solidified fat pipes, we're not doing it so expediently to the point where we need to be ashamed of it. So we want to soak up some of that briskety, bacony goodness with the paper towels. Yeah, you didn't know this is also cooking with bear. What's that circle behind you? That's a hoop off of a barrel. My wife's very country. She decorates very country because we live in the, drum roll please, the country. Moving right along. So alternate would be your handheld. What about a contingency plan for communications? You could look at a different radio on a different band. For example, one might consider CB Citizens Band, which is more or less abandoned at this point. It's not very much so in use. Yes, truck drivers do use it, but that's about it. So you want to think about what's my contingency? And also, you really need to understand as part of your commo plan, who am I trying to talk to and where are they? Because I think a lot of people have this idea in their head that they're going to get their $50 bow fang, key the mic, and talk, you know, from here to Saskatchewan. Is that possible? Yes. Is it possible for most basic or intermediate radio operators? No. So, once again, clearly understanding what the goal is allows you to build out your commo plan in such a way that you can actually achieve said goal. Because if you're trying to talk from here to 200 miles away, you're going to need much different equipment than talking from here to a couple of miles away. And then, so your contingency, you might look at something like a CB radio, for example. And this is in no way a recommendation or an endorsement. It's just an illustration of methodologies that you might employ to be able to accomplish the goal of communicating with your people during SHTF end time chaos, the end of the world as we know it, without rule of law, when the zombies show up to rape your dog and eat your children, or whatever prepper nonsense is popular in the world today. When the pandemic comes and kills everybody except for the 99.8% of people that survive it when they get it, or whatever. Civil unrest resultant of the contested elections. Okay, so contingency would be perhaps a CB radio. Well, what about emergency? Boom, North Korea drops an EMP on top of our foreheads and we can't, nothing works. Well, my radios are in a Faraday cage. Cool, who are you going to talk to? Everybody else whose radios are in a Faraday cage? Maybe. That's possible. Maybe. But think about Stone Age. Okay? Stone Age. Couriers. Hell, maybe even carrier pigeons. I mean, I'd say that kind of tongue-in-cheek, but maybe not. I don't know enough about carrier pigeons to say whether or not that would actually work, but I do know that they have worked previously. So perhaps it's carrier pigeons. Maybe it is couriers. And understand, especially during times of conflict, as we've been discussing on the Daily Brief, in an insurgency, one of the key roles that women and children play is the carrying of messages, intelligence, information, communications between cells. Because the host nation counterinsurgent forces are much more remiss in most cases to take action against women or children, because the whole point of the counterinsurgency is to essentially maintain or reestablish legitimacy of the host nation, as well as win the hearts and minds of the people. Well, it's hard to win the hearts and minds of the people when you be blowing people up all over the place. We don't need to go any deeper into that subject than that. But women and children, understanding that you place them at a much higher level of risk if you employ them in this, can serve as couriers to carry messages, handwritten messages, typed messages, so forth and so on. Pastor Joe Fox of Viking Preparedness recently did a very good video on Patreon talking about matrices, developing matrices for radio and written communications using a series of letters and numbers with code sheets that both parties have, which means that even if your transmission is received, it's still essentially encrypted, because it can only be decrypted if you have one of the two keys, one of the two matrices that makes sense out of those letters and numbers that are being sent. Another method is that you can get two books. A book. The Rainbow Flew Over the Mountain by Bear. Okay, and so you get two copies of The Rainbow Flew Over the Mountain by Bear. And you underline words in the book. And you assign those words letters and numbers. And then, as long as I have my copy of the book and you have your copy of the book, when I send you a message that's just letters and numbers, it doesn't make any sense at all. Literally, even to the person who's carrying it, except for those that have this book, The Rainbow Flew Over the Mountain by Bear, available at bearindependent.com. It's brutal. I would not reckon it's not a children's book at all. I'm kidding. That book doesn't exist, except in my head. The Rainbow Flew Over the Mountain. Okay, and so you might have a series of words underlined there, like bring, gather, carry, rendezvous, food, shelter, water, ammunition, intel, whatever. You underline all those words in the book, assign letters and numbers, page number. You could have, the first string of numbers is 11324. Copy that. Page 113, item number 24, or the 24th word on that page, so forth and so on. Yeah, so that's a way that you could do that as an emergency portion, or in addition to your primary, alternate, and contingency, depending on what it is that you're trying to transmit. So the whole thing here is to understand that you're going to need to communicate, and you need robust ways to be able to do that. You should understand that there is no such thing as secure transmission. Even if you have encrypted radios, the fact that you're transmitting at all, if people, regardless of whether or not they can hear what you're saying, and if you don't have secured encrypted radios, people will hear what you're saying. It doesn't take a whole lot of equipment to be able to scan frequencies, find, what do they call those things? The personal codes. Y'all radio people know what I'm talking about. Find your offsets, essentially, and then hear what you're saying. To say nothing of the fact that even if we can't hear specifically what you're saying, we can hear that you're saying something, that something is being transmitted from somewhere. And if you do that often enough, with enough frequency from the same position, that allows people to triangulate where you triangulate the best words. Believe it, these words, they're the best words. Everyone tells me the best words. Build it. Triangulate where you are. The very fact that you are transmitting is in of itself information, whether or not it's known what you're transmitting. So you need to be clear on that as well. And then I would encourage you to think of things, names and labels for people and places that aren't, you don't want to say, meet me down by the big oak tree, Jim. Well, maybe Jim is Juliet, and he's Juliet 11, and the big oak tree we've decided to call the Crook. All right, Juliet 11, come in, Juliet 11. This is Bravo 1 Actual. Listen, I'm over here at the Crook. Copy. Right? So anybody who is listening in isn't getting names and places, right? You need to have that figured out way before you ever transmit in a dire situation. If you're trying to maintain actual operational security and actual ComSec communication security, you don't want to just be blasting everybody's names and locations all over the place. You know, well, meet me at 123 Elm Street. Why? Okay, you and everybody else is going to meet you at 123 Elm Street. That's a bad idea. Which means, again, you got to be doing your homework on the front end so that on the back end, you're not compromising yourself by simply transmitting. So the whole idea of Commo here, and again, I'm not the Commo guy. I'm not the guy that says, what we need is a beam antenna that's pointed at 127.3 degrees over this way, and it has an amplitude of this thing on the 2-meter band. I'm not that guy, right? I can push the radio and make Commo, but I'm not the Commo guy. Arkansas Preparedness Network here on YouTube has some good videos. Brother Gordy has some good videos on ham radio. Ozark Geek is another good channel here on YouTube that has good information on ham radio. And there's lots. All you got to do is type in ham radio in the YouTube search bar. You'll find it. But I would encourage you to, if you need to know more than that, go there, because again, I'm not that guy. But as far as actual ComSec and how we broadcast and what we broadcast and where we broadcast from and what our Commo plan looks like, PACE, primary, alternate, contingency, emergency, these are some things for y'all to think about. If you would like to go deeper on this stuff, the Prepper Classroom playlist here on YouTube, we have a whole video on Commo. You can check that out there and how that works into ComSec and your intelligence and your recon and your command and control elements and your security forces also need to be able to, everybody within your group has to be able to talk to each other and do it in such a way that you're not betraying yourselves to anybody else who might be listening. That's in the Prepper Classroom playlist here for free on YouTube. As always, shout out to our patrons. You'll see a little baby bear around here somewhere. I think he's over here now. He might be over here now. I don't know. Click him. He'll take you to Patreon. $1 a month, $10 a year to get you started over there. And that's not an I Love Me page. There's at least 30 individual pieces of content per month posted there that you'll never see here because YouTube doesn't like that kind of content here. So we post it there. We can go deeper there. And there's a minimum of 30, many months, much more like 100 exclusive pieces of content over there. So shout out to the Patreons. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. We couldn't do this without you. Y'all have a blessed day. Shalom.